by Zoax. It is self-titled. Zoax is spelled S. No. Z. I can't spell. Zoax. There we go. It came out in 2016 and is their first and only album from the London mob. And they play a very intelligent brand of post-hardcore. The lineup for this album was... So you had Andy, fucking hell. Adam... I promise, English is my first language. Adam Carroll from Time as a Thief on lead vocals. You had Doug Wotherspoon from Atlas and the Bowery, as well as Sean Weir on guitars, although Wotherspoon would leave shortly after the album was released. Joe Copgut of Rise to Remain and Axewood on bass, and then Jonathan Rogers of Burn Down Rome and Air Castles on drums. Before the release of the self-titled, they had 2 EPs out, and that was the 13 EP in 2014 and Is Everyone Listening from, well, the EP as well, from 2015, and this is all from their 2013 Inception. The creative range on this album is nothing short of outstanding. There is a dirty, gritty kind of heaviness juxtaposed with such delicate, intricate melodies that's carried on. There's no one member of the band you can put it down to. It is a collective effort of this bounce between sometimes it's soft, sometimes it's brutal, and sometimes you've got like harsh vocals over the top of melancholy, and sometimes you've got really softly spoken vocals over the top of like quite intricate hardcore riffs. And it breaks away from any like genre stereotypes that may exist, to the point where a lot of people that I've been reading online dub them a UK version of System of a Down, which is pretty high regard, I'd say. The opener and the lead single is a song called The Bad Blood, a lot better than Taylor Swift's version. By Carroll's own words, he described it as safe Zoax, which alone, it's kind of hard to think what that means. In the context of the album, it makes so much sense. I think this is the most streamlined song from the album, with the possible exception of Good Times. But Bad Blood still possesses sharp, really punchy riffs nestled between soft, almost like boy band like breaks throughout. It's the next song, Devil Dance, where you can hear Adam's full range, and he's got such a unique voice, which I think is quite rare. Usually with artists, or with singers, sorry, when they start singing, you can say, oh, that part probably came from, like, reminds me of this band, or that part reminds me of this singer or this guitarist. It's so rare to have a voice where you can say, like, you know what, I can't compare him or her to anyone, which, you know, Adam does really well here. He's got very, like I said, very unique and very individual kind of voice. The song Devil Dance in itself is a very mellow post-rock song in the verses, before the choruses are just shrieked in by Adam, and just a pummeling attack and abuse of why so serious over and over again. It's like if the Joker could be any more schizophrenic, it would sound like this. Roses All the Way is a fantastic, huge sounding math rock inspired anthem with lead rook and hiff. What the fuck is a hiff? Lead, riff, and hooks sound like they belong in like old 80s video game cartridges. There's no better way to describe it than just like weird little fiddly diddly stuff. The sort of stuff that I lambast prog rock for, but it sounds really, really good here because why not? And it's all carried along by some really great rolling drum beats from John Rogers. They play with that big arena rock sound quite a few times in the album. The most eye-catching examples I can think of is in Good Times, which I mentioned before. There are times where it sounds more like a pop punk song, if I'm honest. Not a bad thing. Fucking sounds great, this song. It's a real feel-good song. In amongst like there's moments on the song which are very dark, and I'm about to talk about another one in just 2 seconds. But with Good Times, it is very summer listening, easygoing kind of thing. The song I was alluding to was King and Queen. This has still that big arena rock sound to it, but there is a much darker feel to it. It's hard to put your finger on it. The progression on the vocal execution or vocal delivery on the chorus is really, really well done. Starts off as almost nonchalant cleans, and then with each line just gets gradually more and more abrasive until the big chorus. Superheroes brings in a lot of that math rock from the album. It's drowning about, there must be about 101 different riffs and hooks on the song. And when you see bands like Tiny Moving Parts, and this isn't an attack against Tiny Moving Parts at all, I in fact really, really like that album from last year. When you hear bands like that doing the same sort of thing, that's sort of like plinky plonky, fiddly diddly kind of riffs. I need to find more adjectives. When you hear bands doing that, it makes knowing Zoax aren't around anymore that more difficult, because they're doing it and they're getting a lot of recognition and they're getting a lot of support, and quite rightly so. But Zoax, it kind of felt like they had a very... I'm looking at the Wikipedia page now, and they had so many people and sources review the album, but no one, like a very, very few people still talk about Zoax. I think the only person I've heard in the past like 2 years or so talk about Zoax outside myself was Stephen Hill from The Right Act. And it's just depressing. It's just heartbreaking when you think about it, because this album, there are times on this album, I won't say getting emotional because that's the wrong word, and trying to be goth as fuck, you don't have emotions. Trying to, like, listening to this album back, you do get just this... It's hard to describe. It just feels shitty, the fact that you're listening to this album knowing that it's very unlikely that an album 2 will ever exist. And they kind of got failed by the music industry back when they exploded and should have been like revered as the next big UK rock band. Like when you go back onto the album, like a song like Mirrors, it has like a dark, evil, like Deftones vibe to it. If this was like a superhero movie, Deftones would be the hero, and Mirrors would sort of be like the nega Deftones, or like the evil incarnate version of Deftones. It's a very slow, methodical riff and drum beat, and that's on the back of Carol's low, slow delivery, which is very, very Chino-esque. And then eventually when it gets to the chorus, it's this big vocal explosion, and then it's just the rest of the song sort of like bounces between that like low drum and the big exploding. Yeah, sure, why not? And just about when you think Zoax have covered pretty much every genre there is to cover, there's a lot of math rock in here, there's post-rock, post-hardcore, alternative rock, and you think they've tackled pretty much every other time signature that they could possibly go for, they break out a song like Alive in Sound, which is post-hardcore blended with kind of blues sort of music, and it is slow, swaggering music that's just... I felt like it was so seeping with attitude. Like if this song was a person, it'd be some cocky teenager just out of sixth form wearing a leather jacket telling me that I'm an idiot for going to uni. Which might be true. That's not the point. It's just this very slow, like I said, swaggering kind of song. And yeah, I just can't... It's hard to describe, but I feel like it's got such an attitude behind it. And the whole album finishes with a song called... But it was pronounced Slan. It brings back the melancholy and like the post rock sort of stuff from Devil Dance before building back up the band's sound piece by piece by piece, and that was a really, really cool way they did it. They didn't just get everyone to explode in once. It was just Adam and the guitars, and it eventually joined by the drums and second 2000 bass, and everything just like it was the slow build and the slow burn into this really, really big, beautiful gang vocal climax. And the like after all that happens and after this pace, it's this very quiet, very atmospheric, just ambience, I guess you could describe it, and that ends the album. And it is poetic that the word slan means goodbye in Irish, and I won't say roots because it's not roots, it's just who he is. Adam Carroll is I want to make sure I get this right. That is the wrong Adam Carroll. I want to say he's Northern Irish. No, he's not. He's just Irish. He's just Irish. I had a 50-50 chance, and I know that's not a thing you want to get wrong. I'm being kidding getting that wrong, and some big kid wants to beat the shit out of me. Slan means goodbye in Irish, which is evilly poetic for what would come after this album. So, as I said at the top of the review, Doug Wallace-Boone would leave the band shortly after the album's release, and then just over a year later, in December 2017, the band would split altogether. In a statement released on their Facebook page, it says, "It's been just over a year since we played our last show, and after a lot of soul searching, we've decided to officially call it a day. We want to thank everyone who has been involved with the band's journey, members, management, tour friends, and most importantly, anyone who ever came to a show, bought a shirt, or gave us 5 minutes of their time to listen to one of our songs. This was an incredibly heartbreaking decision for us to make, but we are all just currently in positions of wanting to move on to new things in our lives. We hope our records and show memories stay with you forever." And as I was saying before, well, it's been hard to try and find out what the band have done since. A lot of them still have that they are a member of Zoax in the Twitter bios, but then a lot of them haven't been active online in at least 2 years. The only one I can see who's active is Adam, and it still says Zoax in his bio, but predominantly he has started his own podcast called Geek as a God, and it's with his two friends, Adam and Gary, and they do like tech and video game reviews and that kind of thing. None of them, as far as I can tell, have been musically active since the collapse of Zoax. And so the album stands as a blip in time and is almost forgotten, which is a damn fucking shame because it exists in a time where, what I was going to lead to a minute ago, it exists in a time where defense against the UK music scene wasn't as strong as it is now. Like, you look at some of the bands from today, you've got things like Marmozets, Milk Teeth, Black Peaks, Conjurer, Puppy. They are revered and they're almost protected because they've got constant, really strong support, whether or not that's from reviewers, critics, fans, other bands. They are so, I don't want to say help because I feel like that takes away from what they've done. They've done a lot of the hard work themselves, but there's a better and a stronger network now for up and coming UK talent. Whereas back then, it kind of felt more like, oh, we should do this, but kind of thing. If that makes sense. There's a few bands from this era that I can think of. The ones I wrote down, including Zoax, were The Defiled and kind of Hawkeyes. I think Hawkeyes are like teasing something at the moment, but Hawkeyes, I think you could even put Max Raptor in that list. I know they are still active, but I feel like they didn't get enough of a reputation that they deserve. Similar sort of thing with Feed the Rhino. You've got all these bands who were doing such great things, and if they were to come through now, Palm Reader's another one. Palm Reader, that took them, what's that, 4 albums to get a moderate recognition for Braille. Whereas, like, I'm guilty of it myself. I got dribs and drabs on the last 3 albums, but they are a talent that came out around this time and deserved more support and more eyes on them. And I don't know whether that's because when all these bands were coming through, I don't know if it's just because I was very young, or well, younger than I am now. Didn't have the kind of money to go out and support them myself, or wasn't looking at all the right sources for new music and who supported and whatever. But I feel like if a band like Zoax or The Defile, the Palm Reader, Hawkeyes, or any of those other bands that I mentioned, if they were to break now, they would be rubbing shoulders with the likes of your Black Peaks, your Conjurers, your Puppies. But it's just how it is. It is, like I said, it is a huge shame. Like I said, I got about this album a lot. If you would like to, for comparisons, I thought of the Marmosets, Alexis on Fire, and even Biffy Clyro, more earlier end, early to mid end, so sort of, what's that, Puzzle and Only Revolutions. That kind, oh my god, just punched my pop shield. And I can't think what the album's called, but the one that came before Only Revolutions. That era where they were still more of a alternative rock band as opposed to a mainstream alternative rock band. That's not a dig on Biffy Clyro, but I feel that's the best way I can describe them. That kind of thing. So that, Alexis on Fire, Marmosets. If you're just a fan of interesting music in general, similar to what I was saying about Black Peaks last year, if you just like interesting, really intricate and thought-provoking music, I feel like you should give Zoax a jolly good go.